Coach Panda is here with us. Keith Wittenstein, welcome.
Thanks.
So
Glad to be
Keith
here.
Keith goes back and forth. You either have very long hair or no hair,
Right. Yeah. It's
and
all or nothing.
all or nothing. Right now, you're going with nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Which does your wife prefer?
I think she mostly likes the short-haired version better.
Really interesting.
Mostly. Mostly. Yeah. I mean, she definitely likes me clean shaven as opposed to scruffy. And I
You
think,
rarely get scruffy though.
yeah, a little bit. Not too bad. It's like seasonal. Like usually in the cold weather, I put on like 20 pounds and a lot of hair, and then in the summer, I shave everything and lose like 20 pounds.
I would agree with that. And I think what gets overlooked about you is your age.
Yeah.
Are you 50 now?
No, 48, almost 49.
I mean, you're getting up there.
Yeah, yeah,
I, I was just talking with Becky Harsh. She's 45. The three of us are all on staff, and really, I think the age of seminar staff has gone up a little bit. It's a more mature staff.
I think so. I think so. There's a lot of veterans and the new people. There's some new, fresh, young blood on staff right now, but I think some of the people they're bringing on staff too are still like in their mid to late 30s. I think too. There's a couple of more seasoned people they're bringing on staff as
Well, and
opposed and the
well, if you think about it, though, you have to be a really good coach to be on staff. That's
right.
not going to happen at 21 or 22 years old.
There's a few exceptions to that. There's a couple of young bucks on staff who are surprisingly good at a young age, but
Like who, for example? Do you have specifics?
Uh, well, I mean, Joey Dill in his prime was a classic example. Uh,
Joey Dill in his prime. He was young,
he's he's almost no longer on staff.
but
He's barely on staff right now.
yeah, he just doesn't work as much. He's busy, but he's also he's almost 30
Yeah, okay, but yeah, he started
now.
when he was like,
Now,
yeah,
so with that being said, let's talk about your career. First of all, people refer to you as Panda. A lot of people don't know the origins of that. What is the origin of Coach Panda?
yeah. So surprisingly, the origin of Coach Panda is not something I'm proud to share on the podcast about being a great coach, because it mostly comes from my occasional fits of rage at the gym when I would just get like frustrated and like throw like a plate or a barbell or something across the room. And they would refer to it as panda rage, and then they'd post these videos of various pandas smashing stuff on my Facebook and after an incident.
So your nickname has more to do with your, how should we say, raging as a coach versus virtuosity as a coach.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. You've been involved in the CrossFit space since, man, you took the old school level one that was 3 days back in Santa
Yes,
Cruz, California. A lot of people
yeah,
don't know about you. You're also, you, I don't know what the term is now because you were an attorney. I suppose you're still an attorney,
right.
but
I'm no longer barred, but I'm still an attorney, I guess.
you weren't disbarred based on these
No,
panda rages, were you?
no, definitely
Okay.
not.
You just haven't kept your accreditation up to date, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I just haven't, paid my dues or done my CEUs or any of that stuff. So I just
Yeah,
let that
the
lapse.
the Own Your Eating certificate course is good for CrossFit CEUs, but not as good for attorney CEUs.
That's too bad. That's too bad. I wish there was crossover.
So, but I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, and we're joking about your raging, but can you remember a period of time where you were burned out as a coach?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, you open a gym and you get there first thing in the morning. You teach classes all day. And you spend like it just seems like how many times do I have to tell people to arch their backs and stay on their heels and squat lower and do all that stuff, and suddenly you're just like overwhelmed with like day in and day out of the same old, and it gets a little frustrating.
Fern and I recently discussed it. Well, what were some of the things you were able to do to snap out of that?
Besides throwing fits,
Besides throwing equipment at your members.
besides drinking heavily, besides that.
Hey, no, maybe
uh,
that was the key. Maybe that was something we missed.
yeah, no, I think that's actually a part of it. I mean, we had a very intense gym environment, and it comes out of a place where I really care and I really want the best for my members. And sometimes, my ability to show that was lacking. My emotional ability didn't necessarily lagged behind my coaching ability. I was like, I know what I want, and I don't know how to express that, and I can't get you there, and it frustrates me, and it frustrates my athletes, and then it culminates in me, throwing a hissy fit, and then it's like we hug it out, and we all go out and drink and have a good time, and like put that behind us, and we start over again and try to figure out how we can get everyone better and happier.
Yeah, I've been there as a box owner. I mean, I remember one time yelling at my members to leave and go join a different gym because they didn't. But, but one thing you said that I don't think really Fern and I touched upon is it does come from that caring. In other words, you wouldn't burn out if you didn't care. You care so much that it's more you get frustrated.
Right. Yeah. My frustration with, it just comes out of the fact that I really care. I really want the best for you, and I want to be the best. And there's obviously a gap between where I am and what I'm able to do, and where you are and where I'm able to get you to. And if I didn't want to bridge that gap so badly and so instantly, like right now, like I want to take you to the next level, like, and my shortcomings coupled with your shortcomings are just creating a huge tension. And I think it comes from that. I think that's where the frustration and everything comes from. If I didn't give a crap, like, it would be easy.
Yeah, it'd be easy to come in, go through the
Yeah.
motions.
Yeah.
And it's
Tell
better
you how
than
awesome you are. Everybody's great. Woohoo! Come on,
be
guys,
that
let's do this.
cheerleader.
Yeah, I can be
So
a cheerleader.
I don't think we've had, that's not true. We have had people on that have been to that original level one. We talked to Kelly Starrett recently, Coach Bergner. They were all part of that original one, but I've not really asked them about it. Tell the listeners what the old school level one was like back in 2004, 2005.
Actually, I took one of the last 3-day ones, and it was 2006. But I mean, it was Coach Glassman. You show up at the Santa Cruz box on day one. It's a Friday now instead of a Saturday. And there's a who's who of like sort of internet celebrities from back in the day, like back before. Now it's weird because, I mean, the social media is much more hyped, and you're so much more connected and close to all these like CrossFitters via social media. And when you see somebody, like a James Hobart at a level one now, it's you feel like you know them a little bit better. But back then it was only like little snippets of like workouts that you'd see Greg Amundsen do, little pictures of some of these people on the CrossFit Journal, and just like you'd see handfuls of like just very limited access to these people, and I would like chat with some of them on the message boards. And so when I got to Santa Cruz, I remember there was a old school trainer at CrossFit Santa Cruz named Lonnie Lau, and she was a demo girl back in the original days of like Annie and Nicole, and Lonnie was one of the demo girls back then, and we had like connected on the message boards, and I think she'd been out to New York once to train with us in Central Park. And so when I went out to California, she was like, oh, she met me Friday morning. She took me to the Silver Spur Diner, which is where
That place is
everybody.
the best.
Yeah, she took me there before the seminar to like grab some breakfast and coffee, and she's like, oh, that's Mike Rutherford. He's the dumbbell guy over there. Coach Bergner sitting down over there. On that table was like Mark Rippetts. All the trainers had gotten in there early to like get breakfast, and so she was just popping around, introducing me from table to table, and it was wild, and then grabbed some coffee and breakfast and went over to the Santa Cruz, the original box, and it was like I'd seen all these videos and pictures of that place, and it was the first time I'd ever been in a room with that many other CrossFitters. Back in the day, it was me and like maybe 10 people that we would all work out in Central Park together. And it wasn't 10 people all at the same time. It was like one weekend you'd get like 5 people, and another weekend you get 5 different people. But there was about 10 of us doing CrossFit in New York City at that time. So it was really wild.
How did you even get involved in it back in 2006? And what was the catalyst to get you to actually, purchase a plane ticket, spend $1,000 and go take it? Because it wasn't like it is today where there's CrossFits on every corner. I mean, you went on to open CrossFit Virtuosity, which was one of the first boxes in the 5 boroughs.
Well, CrossFit NYC was the first one we opened.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you opened NYC.
So here's the deal. I was a jiu-jitsu guy since 1997, right? I after law school, I basically went right into jiu-jitsu. And then
you got to keep learning.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the progression. In law school, getting way out of shape because all you do is study and drink. So was working out a little bit at the gym. My buddies were like, taking me to the school gym and teaching me about like, back and buys, chest and tries, and eating protein. I'm like, all right, so this is how you work out.
So that was really your first exposure to working out. You didn't do any of that as a kid.
Yeah, not really. I barely did any gym time as a kid.
That's
high school, college, even. I don't think I was a musician in college, so I never made it into a gym.
Yeah, people don't know that about you, that you were, pretty good local musician in the upstate New York area. But that's interesting to know that, someone doesn't start exercising seriously, I would say, till, 22, 23 in law school.
I was older than that. I was like, 25, 26 towards the end of law school. I graduated when I was 26 or 27.
But to then become one of the best coaches in the world, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So from there, I was working out in the gym and I was getting bored, and I was thinking maybe I should do some like martial arts or something. That would be kind of cool. And then my buddy took me into a store, back when they had video stores, right? Like Blockbuster and stuff. And he pulled out a video of like UFC. He's like, you got to check this guy out. And so I watched like the first or second UFC with Royce Gracie.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit. So like I rented all, like it was the first like 3 or 4 UFCs with Royce Gracie, and I watched them all. I was like, yo, this guy's crazy. And then I found a video of Renzo Gracie, his cousin. I was like, this guy's insane. And then I was like, I'm going to do this Brazilian jiu-jitsu shit. And then like there was one place in Boston when I was in Boston, like, but it was like far away, and I was towards the end of law school, and all I was thinking about was like studying and finals, and I wasn't thinking about like starting that right then. But I looked on like a black belt magazine. There was an ad for Renzo Gracie Academy in New York. And I was like, when I go back to the city, I'm going to go right there. And that's exactly what I did. So as soon as I moved back to New York, took the bar exam. And then after the bar exam, I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing this jiu-jitsu thing. And I went right down, made a beeline to Renzo's Academy. I started training there and then was into that and just was getting my butt wiped like on the mats, like constantly. And I was like realizing, like, I probably need to get in better shape. And that's when this guy, BJ Penn, came out and got his black belt in like 4 years, went and won UFC, won the worlds at like black belt, like, and then won the UFC. And he held up like a CrossFit shirt at one point after winning one of his fights. And I was like, what is that? And so I went down the rabbit hole. This is like 2003, 4, somewhere around there. And just like went down deep into the rabbit hole of like CrossFit. And I was reading the website, had no idea what any of these exercises was. Didn't know what a kettlebell was. Didn't know what a clean, a jerk, a snatch was. Any of this stuff. But I was reading Coach Glassman's words. I was like downloading these journal articles and PDFs. And I was like, this guy's talking about fitness like nothing I've ever read in Muscle and Fitness magazine, right? And I was like, this guy's really smart. I was like, whatever he's saying, I was like, I want to do that. And then, of course, I would go and try a workout and be like, this is fucking hard. And then I started looking.
Do you remember your first workout?
No, but I remember being in Crunch one day trying to do Angie, 100 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. And like they only had like, the one knurled bar between the cable crossover machines. Yeah. And I'm on that thing trying to kip like through 100 pull-ups, and it's taking me forever. And I like tearing my hands and like throwing a towel over the bar. And periodically a trainer would come by and be like, that's not how you do a pull-up. you know.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, then you would do like the push-ups and sit-ups, and I'm doing squats, and then periodically a trainer would come over to me and say, you know, you shouldn't squat that low, it's going to hurt your knees. So there's some memories getting like a lot of grief from a lot of trainers at like various sports clubs in New York during various workouts. That's more of what I remember than like which was my first one, you know.
So you go to Santa Cruz, you take the 3-day course, you're
Well,
surrounded
so
by these web
before
celebrities.
before that, like I'm like doing CrossFit more or less like partially on my own, finding other people in New York who want to do it. I end up, you know, getting a little group of people together, and then one of those people is Josh Newman, and Josh is like, you know, I'm like, this is back in the day where I could actually get Coach Glassman like on the phone and get him on email, and would reach out to him periodically and be like, hey, are you guys ever coming to New York? And he's like, you don't understand. You guys are creating the New York scene right now. You guys are going to start the gym. And we're like, what? No, we just started. I don't want to open a gym. I just want to do CrossFit workouts. Come here and open a gym and train. And he's like, you don't understand. And so finally, like Josh like affiliated us. He put up a blog and he's like, I affiliated us. I just paid the $500 and we're an affiliate now. I'm like, we are? He's like, what's a blog? I'm like, he's like, here's the password. Just write up the workout that we did in the park. I'm like, okay. So we started blogging and putting up workouts and putting up pictures of us working out in the park. And then lo and behold, it was like we started getting thrown out of different gyms that we were working out at. And finally it dawned on us, like, you know, we should like offer like a regular, we found a place that would actually let us work out regularly, like a couple days a week, like on like the weekends. And so I was like, well, now that we're here every weekend and they're not throwing us out, let's like start a class and see if we can get people to like pay us and come in regularly. Cause it was just sort of like, you know, show up if you want, but now at least we can make a plan. And so we started, you know, we sold like a 6-week package or something like of, you know, CrossFit, and all these people showed up. And I guess like we have a gym now. It's like, well, I guess I should go do my level 1 and we should start looking for a space.
But meanwhile, you were still like, I'm going to be an attorney.
I was doing some legal work at the time during the week, and I don't know if I'd done my yoga teacher training at that point. I think I had done my yoga teacher training at that point, was teaching yoga a little bit too.
Speaking of that, you, in my opinion, are probably the most diverse coach I know. I mean, you're kind of an expert in all fields. I mean, you are very, very good at jiu-jitsu. You teach that regularly, but you have your yoga. You were at one point a part of the kettlebell staff, the gymnastics staff. You and I go back to Coach Rip and the barbell staff. So what was it about you that allowed you to just learn so much, or the desire to learn so much?
I don't know where the desire came from, but
Yeah, because you're
I
not a
think
very motivated person in general.
nice. But I think there's a cliche that, like, you know, the best athletes make the worst coaches and vice versa. You know, there's some saying to that effect. And I was never an athlete, but I was always like curious when I started one of these, you know, went down these roads, I would learn as much as I can about it. And I think that's generally sort of my MO, is that, yeah, I'm not a very motivated person until I find something, and then I'm kind of get really deep into it. Just like, you know, law school, never grew up thinking about being a lawyer, and then I went to law school and I was just like, I'm all in, and I was just like nerdy law guy for a few years, and then, you know, then started getting into yoga, and then I was like, yeah, yoga's kind of fun, and then all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to do a teacher training, and then I became the nerdiest like yoga guy that you could find. And then it was kind of same with, you know, when I found CrossFit, I was like, yeah, this stuff is kind of fun. And I kind of got really into it. And then I just would, like, you know, read every journal article and read every, you know, thing I can. And this was also back in the day when there wasn't access to a lot of stuff like there is now. So you really had to figure it out. Like I couldn't just, but I what?
And I was going to say, you are, I mean, I was joking earlier. I mean, you do a lot of things in your life to the extreme, but you do them well. I mean, you know, you went to law school. That's an achievement in and of itself. You're a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, probably not far off from, you know, attaining your black belt. You are part of the seminar crew. You're a very good husband and father to your two kids. You were in a band. You've done. Point is, Keith Wittenstein's a pretty smart dude.
Thanks.
Now, was that part of what made you ultimately such a good coach? Just, do you think it was the desire to learn more? Do you think it was your ability to connect with people? Do you think it was the fact, because I agree with you, Rip used to say this and I say it about myself, the worst athletes make the best coaches. Was it the struggle? What about it?
I think like I partially have not only a passion to learn, but like as soon as I figure something out, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Let me show it to you.
Right.
Right. Like anything I've ever learned, I've always wanted to turn around and like teach it to somebody else. This is sort of a weird thing that's, followed me at least through like, the last half of my life, the last 25 years almost. It's like, I went to law school and I'd figure out something and then I'd sit around in like the study group. I'm like, guys, check out, and I'd explain this whole legal theory to people and they'd be like, oh, and I'd figure out some crazy yoga stuff and I'd start teaching it in my classes. I'd figure out like, this entry into, leg locks. And I'm like, I got to show everybody this thing. I just figured this out. And that's, how I've kind of operated. So I just have this passion for like, sharing whatever I figure out, because I think that was cool. Somebody else would probably think this was cool too. And just, go from there.
But that's a unique thing, because not everyone. I'm in agreement with you. Like, I think part of that is we enjoy helping other people, but some people learn something new, and not that they're being selfish, but they don't have that immediate desire to go and teach someone else. And it's really big in the jiu-jitsu world. You're right. You're like, hey, I learned a new entry to the honey hole. I can't wait to show my crew.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us. Some people don't remember Mark Ripito. So Mark Ripito was a crazy Texan, someone that you and I would call our friend. He was the barbell guy till about 2009-ish in the CrossFit world, and whatever happened, he's no longer involved. But do you have a favorite Rip story? You and I traveled quite a bit with him for about a year.
Yeah. I was with Rip for about a year and a half, traveling, doing the seminars. He is one of the most awesome, smart, funny people, but also the most opinionated and stubborn person. And if his agreement is counter to your, if his opinion is counter to your opinion, you're in for a rough ride. And that's where I think him and CrossFit parted ways, is that he was unwilling to budge on a lot of his opinions. But man, when, he wrote a great book on the basic lifts, and he's a great coach for teaching the basic lifts. But he's also a diehard Texan, and he's constantly griping about not being able to get his knives through the TSA. And, every seminar was an undertaking in like, great coaching, getting people to lift heavy and also drinking a lot of bourbon and having a good time. So it was a fun experience working with him for that year and a half.
Yeah, that was the year I learned all about steak and bourbon.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you would go a weekend with Rip, and it was the most unhealthy weekend you could have. But you mean?
No, I don't know if it's the most unhealthy.
Lack of sleep. There wasn't enough sleep happening, because he would keep us up late and get up so early.
Yeah, part of your gear for the weekend had to include a small flask.
Yeah.
with some sort of brown liquor in it. was a hard, firm requirement of working with Ripito.
But speaking of knives, we're working in DC one time, and I think we were all coming home on Monday, and we had a later flight, and he wants to go to one of the museums, like one of the Smithsonian. So we go there, metal detector beeping like crazy.
Oh yeah.
He unloaded like 8 knives out of his pocket. And they were like, you can't come in with these. And he was like, well, I'm not leaving them. And I was like, I'll take them back to the hotel and just head to the airport. But it was
nice.
It was one of those situations. Now, with all of your expertise in different the realms of fitness, where would you say your superpower is? What's your best coaching, what do you coach the best?
I feel like I feel like I'm really good at teaching the squat, and I'm really good at sort of fixing really crappy squats, right? And I think I think I have a gift for that, maybe.
And now when you say like the air squat at a level 1, are you talking of, a member's back squatting and you can help them, improve their low bar back squat?
I would say all of the above. Like, the squat is something I've just spent loads and loads and loads of time working on myself and other people. And I feel like, I mean, the hardest part of that maybe is that some people are unwilling to change the way they squat.
Yeah,
but
there's more of that happening.
but like, in terms of like, it's one of those things where a lot of people are into, right now it's really popular, like all these assessments and stuff like that, with like various people doing various assessments and PT stuff, and like and then being able to diagnose whether or not people can or should squat. And I think there's a place for that. But I find like the squat in itself, and people, I think even you had Sean on here like a couple of weeks ago talking about how the squat is not an assessment, and I just violently disagree with that. It's like, if you know how to watch a squat, right, and watch what the person does and where they compensate, you can see a ton of stuff in there.
Yeah, that was kind of what he said, where,
Yeah.
The FMS screening, where Coach Glassman's like, those things are useless. Watch someone squat. And I agree with you. I think, and of course, I think you and I are both pretty biased towards CrossFit, right? But I agree with what
Yeah.
Coach Glassman's saying. And I can assess you based on how you move through these 9 foundational movements. If you can't do these, I don't really need to see much more. Let's get these better.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a place for other assessments and stuff, and there's certainly stuff that's less visible or maybe even invisible when you're squatting, and especially when you're good at compensating for various things. But ultimately, one is a correlate of the other. A lot of these assessment tools are just correlates of good movement and not actually good movement. And I think we, as level 1 seminar trainers, spend a lot of time not working with correlates, but actually working with the real movements and trying to get those better. And I think that's where the majority of sort of the average trainer's time should be spent, is working on just getting people to do those movements better, and not diving deeper into other assessments that kind of lead them further away from good movement, potentially.
What do you think about your?
I'm gonna tell you a story.
I don't tell it. Yeah, go ahead.
Because I was sitting there and I was watching a little workshop with a fairly good PT giving a seminar to a bunch of trainers at a gym, and it was good stuff. It's like, well, here's how you screen like ankle dorsiflexion. You do a little knee bend test, and you sort of see how far they can get the knee past the toes, and you can do it to a post on the thing, and here's how you do this screen here for this range of motion and that range of motion. And I was like, that's all good, but like I worked with these same trainers, and I'm like, most of them can't see if someone's squatting below parallel and their knees are tracking their toes and their heels are down. And I was like, which one is the more important thing on their day-to-day thing, to get people's heels down, knees tracking the toes, and full range of motion, or now doing another assessment for dorsiflexion and something else where I'm sure they can't see any difference in the two tests, like the before and after, right? It was like, if they can't see a heels down in a squat that they look at 1,000 squats a day, they're not going to be able to do this test of yours with any greater clarity or specificity. So it's like, why are we wasting our time?
That's a really good point. And I think in the time, especially since you got involved, but since I got involved a year later as well, all of a sudden it went from like, hey, let's work hard, to all this mobility talk for a short period of time. And do you think it just got carried away? I mean, at most level 1s and 2s, ultimately, you and I will pull somebody into the center. We'll be fixing. One of the participants will raise their hand and say, like, shouldn't they just mobilize?
Yes.
So talk to the listeners about that. As someone who is very well versed in this, how do you address that? How do you address the members that think that, and how do you address the coaches that put that emphasis on that versus just like, hey, let's get you moving better?
Right. Yeah. It's, I think it's like we wanted, in an effort to sort of, you know, I mean, be more thorough. And there's, and there's certainly a place for all the mobility and stuff. And I love that stuff. But in an effort to be sort of more thorough and try to clean up a bunch of stuff, ultimately what most people drop the ball in doing is putting it back into, we take all the pieces out and want to look at all the pieces, but we never put them back together and rebuild the thing into what we want. Right. So now we've dissected like the shoulder, external rotation. Now we've, dissected, the hip, flexion and external rotation, but we haven't put it back together into the movement where we wanted it in the first place. So most people don't have the time or the wherewithal to do all that extra stuff. They should spend what time they have just making, working in that squat and working into these positions, working on that front rack. And then, if there's any, room for improvement that can't be done with, the elbow grease and the time under tension, yeah, we can take it out and look at it in terms of some other mobility stuff. But more often than not, people sort of get pulled out into mobility land and don't go back into fixing movement.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, the front rack's a great example. Every weekend at the level 1, the front rack's tough with PVC, and people, well, what drill should I do? Here's the drill you should do. Get in this front rack more often.
Yeah.
Get better at this movement pattern. That's how you get better. Having coached dozens, if not hundreds of level 2 seminars, what would you say is the biggest mistake you see from CrossFit coaches? And I say level 2s because typically those are coaches that are coming back, 6 months to 5 years after taking their level 1. We watch them coach. We give them feedback. What do you see as the biggest flaws?
I think most of it is sort of, maybe, I don't know if I've heard anybody say this on this podcast yet, but I think it's a not really caring enough about getting people to move better. I know we want people to move better, but there's a breakdown between how we get there. And also, there's also a tendency for people to settle for like meh, right? I always say we're not forging meh fitness, we're forging elite fitness, right? We're not, and you got to have your standards a lot higher, right? When you go into a teaching situation, I look at how you start moving, and after you spent 5-10 minutes with me, you have to be moving better. My job is to make sure you're moving better. It's not based on my ego. It's like, but this is what you're paying me for. This is what you intrinsically want, is to get better coaching so you move better. And most people sort of just feel it's their duty. Well, I just have to explain deadlifts to you for 5 minutes, and that maybe should help. And that absolutely has no bearing on people's movement, right? We have to get in there and actually get them to do reps, and each rep we have to chisel away like we're carving a statue, and make it better and better and better, rep after rep after rep, until 20-30 reps later I've chiseled away all the crap that was in your deadlift form, and now you have a really tight, good deadlift form.
Yeah, I think Coach Glassman put it nicely. Don't let your eyes get used to shitty movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
but there's an inherent sort of unwillingness to put yourself out there. There's an unwillingness to sort of ask people to do more. We don't want to be perceived as like being too pushy, and there's also just sort of an uneasiness, like of like maybe sort of an insecurity. I'm like, I don't really know. It all kind of looks the same, and I think it all sort of stems from just sort of not really. I don't know if it's a lack of passion, a lack of understanding, a lack of just knowing what the inherent job is that we're trying to get people to do as coaches. It's like you got to be able to look at whoever steps into your class, and then an hour later they got to be a better person. If not emotionally, hopefully at least physically, we get them a little bit moving a little better by getting their back straighter, getting their heels down, getting their bar paths better, cleaning up whatever, crappy movement they came in with.
So let's assume you have a coach that does care. They're passionate about this. They're watching, we've both seen it many times at a level 2. Hey, coach the air squat. They go through their little 2 minutes of talking, watch 2 reps, and they're like, he's good. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What is some actionable feedback? What are some teaching points we can help if someone's listening that does want to be a better coach? What are some things you recommend to do?
Tunnel vision. It's funny because like most of the people you encounter, at the high level coaches in CrossFit, tend to want to drift towards something like Olympic weightlifting because it's viewed as sexier and it's very complex, and you have this highfalutin status as somebody who teaches a very complex skill. But ultimately, like, all movement is complex, like, which is, right now is like, I used to use this analogy of like, it's really hard to like dissect walking, just like normal human walking. There's so much stuff that goes on there. But now you see these Boston Dynamics robots that are like walking and jumping and moving around. And so they've definitely got the algorithms like almost wired. But like, if you just like dissect someone's like foot position, like whether their weight is shifting on their foot, they're coming into their toes, their weight's shifting in, they're spinning their feet out when they squat. There's so much stuff right in there about their movement pattern, about their mobility, about their balance and their coordination. And then take it to the next level, to the knees, to the hips, right? There's so much like kinesthetics, so much physiology going on right in just watching their lower body in something as simple as a squat, that like you should never be bored. Like, you should take the time to look at that and say, what the hell is going on? And then once you figure it out on one person, look at someone else, and you'll be left with a whole bunch of new like issues that you never even thought of with the first person. And you do this with 10 athletes a class, 10 classes a day, over like 10 years, and you will be like a super coach. You'll develop a super eye. And you have to like look at every foot and knee and hip and vertebra and shoulder that comes into your box with fresh eyes, and look at that as an opportunity to fix human movement and to perfect human movement.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is coaches just aren't doing that, right? In and of itself, that's not that hard. Watch movement, but in this day and age in CrossFit, whether it's multiple things happening in a class, too many people in a class, too many movements in any given workout, it's hard to just take that time and, hey, watch, are their knees tracking their toes?
Yeah. It's a shame.
What
hopefully that like at least allows a space for people like dinosaurs like me and you to still have like jobs, because we care about stuff like that.
We do, and I think it's partly also just that was the culture when we started. It's hard if you get involved in CrossFit in 2017, 18, 19. Maybe you joined a box that put no emphasis on coaching. Now all of a sudden you want to be a better coach, but you don't have any experience getting coached or someone that can mentor you. You have to seek that out. What are
it also comes from like my own personal like chip on my shoulder, where it's like I was doing yoga and I would hang out with some like pretty high level yoga people who are all about like the alignment. And it would always like poo-poo, the other styles of yoga that weren't into alignment. And they would certainly poo-poo anything that resembled like hard exercise as something that was like maybe like not as, refined and upper crust as like this beautifully aligned like yoga practice. And I was like, the beauty of human movement is everywhere, and it's not just in yoga. And good alignment is good alignment everywhere. So I took that sort of like maybe sort of snobby, attitude towards alignment, and just like brought it into sort of my way I looked at like movement in other parts of life, in terms of like CrossFit, in terms of jiu-jitsu. It's like there's good movement and there's bad movement everywhere, and I definitely want to side in the camp of good movement if I can.
you've been a part of multiple affiliates. What is something this day and age that affiliate owners could be doing better?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've been out of the affiliate game for a while.
But
Um,
I mean, some people know you own part of New York City, NYC. You were owner of Virtuosity. You've coached at numerous boxes, in the New York, New Jersey area. What are some of the better things you saw then? What are better boxes doing that the boxes that aren't doing well are not doing?
I think the best boxes, one, obviously, are really keyed into their community and creating a really good space uh, for members to have a good time. I think, I think I know it depends how you like what you consider a good affiliate too. I mean, there's certain affiliates that seem to show up at the games all the time and they're competitively excellent, which for some people they'd place a premium on that. I
Let's say
sort of,
making money, having a good membership base of over 100 members.
yeah. I mean, I just, I've known Dave Osorio since before he started CrossFit South Brooklyn, and just like the longer I know him, the more impressed I am with how he's like maintained this like just steady, like even keeled sort of community in box where it's just grown and grown and grown and just gotten better and better and better. And I'm just like, uh, he's one of those standout individuals and with one of those standout affiliates that's just like constantly, moving in the right direction. Maybe slowly, but like over time, it's proven to be really good. I think he's maybe a good example of the tortoise. And I think with NYC and Virtuosity, I was probably trying to be more of the hare and really try to push the envelope and go, do more stuff more quickly. And maybe that's kind of why I'm burned out on affiliate ownership at the moment. But also eager to get back in right now because I want to have a box with like CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu in it now.
Are you considering that? Is that something that's in the future for you?
It's something I'm considering. I don't know if it's a realistic thing, but it's something I still like, drive around, look at a space and like, oh yeah, that might be a nice place to, and then I also kind of dream like, how would we have both things running at once? Because I know some places do it some well, and some places are having a struggle trying to run both things at once.
It is funny though, once you've owned affiliates, every time you see like a for sale or for rent sign, you kind of evaluate at you still there, Keith?